Good evening, wrestling fans, and welcome to the April 22nd, 2011 edition of Wrestle Talk Show. I'm your host, Joshua Zimmerman, here to bring you the latest and greatest professional wrestling news, bits, rumors, ins and outs, anything and everything pro wrestling, we cover it. Shout out to our viewers. Without you, this would not be possible. We want to thank all of you who submitted submissions for the logo contest. We're reviewing all of them. Once again, the cutoff for that is May 14th at midnight, and the winner will be posted May 15th by 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can submit your logo submissions to cwecompany@gmail.com, cwecompany@facebook.com, or simply visit the show site at WrestleTalkShow.webs.com, where you can do one of many things. You can support the show via the PayPal link, or like I always say, the next best thing to donating money. We always understand economic hardship, so donate as little or as much as you want if you can. We promise you that every single dollar will be spent to enhance this. I've already gotten bids. Justin, this is a shout out to you. I did receive your email. I am reviewing your email, and don't quote me on it, but you'll hear back by tomorrow morning. I apologize for the delay. I wanted to give like a day or two for the emails to kind of build up. That way, I like to go into it and have a couple of them. That way, when I do it, when I reply to them, I can shoot right off with one right after the other, response, and not like wait for them to drag in and stuff like that. But that's just one of many things you can do at the site. You can also interact with our online forum. Post your opinion on a question already posted. Pose a new question. Submit show comments to the email address already given, or directly under this video, along with the 100+ videos we have archived on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/CWEcompany. And enough with the plugs, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you for your viewership. So it's a lot of wrestling news. There is, just to give you some highlights on the show, we have full details on the Jeff Hardy continuance yet again. And just to give you an early warning, that is the core of the show segment. And I'll go in another kind of the same direction as I did about 3 months ago when the continuances started happening. But I'll elaborate on it more. There's news of Ric Flair having surgery. TNA ratings news. They need to get with it or get gone, because they're almost gone. All this and more. So let's get right into it. And by the way, guys, another thing I like about the show is call it what you will, but I don't like going back and editing anything or everything like that. Anything like that, I like to bring it to you directly how you get it. So whatever you hear, you hear. However I cut it. Viewer discretion is advised on episodes where we know we're going to get out of control, but some of my rants I can take to an extreme. So if you're sensitive to that, just don't listen. It's YouTube, baby. Anyway. Moving right along, we'll get into that TNA ratings news right away. TNA ratings not looking good. Regular decline over the last month and everything for this month, basically March and April. Impact on Thursday, April 22nd, scored a 1.17 rating, up slightly from a 1.14 rating last week and a 1.15 2 weeks ago. Overall, on cable TV, Impact ranks number 29 for the night, number 23 in males in their core demographic 18 to 34, and number 8 in their secondary demographic 18 to 49. Impact's overall 1.17 rating was even with the 5-week trend and below the 2011 average rating of 1.22. The 5-week trend for ratings of the show are as follows. March 24th, it scored a 1.23. March 31st, 1.18. April 7th, 1.15. April 14th, 1.14. April 21st, 1.17. The average for the 5-week is a 1.17. So let's take a minute and talk about that for a second. We announced yesterday, and as specified again, the show that says it's dated for today was intended to post. It didn't. The computer went into sleep mode, and the video didn't finish downloading until I woke up this morning and restarted the computer. But the show dated for the 22nd, even though it's trivial, is supposed to be our April 21st show, and this is our April 22nd show. But we announced yesterday, regardless, that Spike TV hired a new executive that they're taking an aim of more non-scripted shows and things of that nature, so it's safe to assume that they're going to want the scripted material that they do have to either do better, or they can simply phase it out, because it sounds like that's more or less it's shit or get off the pot. They're going to, my opinion, this new initiative by Spike and the new executive or executives, who knows what they'll do down the line. We don't know what they're doing in-house. But it's basically going to put TNA in a position to where scripted isn't even where we want to be, assuming the role of Spike TV. So TNA, you either give us a 2 or better, or start ensuring that the rating, or doing everything you can to get that rating up instead of accepting the decline. For your go-home show off of the pay-per-view, not real impressive. Not 1.17 is not impressive at all for a pay-per-view that we already criticized for. A lot of things went wrong. A lot of people, I think we can sum it up by saying, we've broken it down in the last 2 videos, but we can sum it up by saying a lot of people weren't on the same page. The Kurt Angle, Jeff Jarrett botches weren't the only things that were wrong with that pay-per-view. Just the fact that the pay-per-view is named Lockdown, but then it winds up being, the lockdown aspect is just a prop that the wrestlers use to jump off of and perform off of. There was no lockdown aspect. It wasn't like a Hell in a Cell where every match happens in the cage. But we'll come back to it. But more or less, well, actually, there's no reason to really even come back to it, because just to, conclude this, it's like I said, if Spike TV sticks with what it announced, this new executive and their new direction is for non-scripted TV. So the scripted TV they still have contracts with, and this, doesn't necessarily isolate Impact, but Impact, TNA's part of it. They're gonna, we're hoping, and especially with the talk of the internal changes with TNA being discussed, that Spike's not going. I prayed for this and ranted about it, but now maybe Spike will put them in a position, hey, look, get better consistent ratings and no more declines than where you're at. 1.17 should be the lowest they want that show to go. The guideline now for their new direction should be, TNA, if you want to stick around, this needs to be a 2 or better by this time in April. But we'll see what happens. Hey, I'll call you right back. I'm on the phone with Chris. But moving along, just maybe it's an answer to our prayers, like I said. I mean, we were talking the last couple of videos that somebody needs to step in, and I said once, why is Spike TV content with these ratings more or less when they have original programming of their own that scores better in the ratings? But we'll see what happens. We'll give this a couple of weeks, and with the TNA talk, maybe everything, once it comes out of the washer, so to speak, everything will be brand new on both sides, and we hope TNA comes out with a product identity and a product goal, because I think that those are two things that it lacks. But we'll come back around on that after we bang out the rest of your news. Your wrestling news and rumors, and I'll just go into it and say that most of this is news and or confirming on stories. It's not really rumors, considering the TNA release I announced yesterday. There's confirmation on that, but we'll get into that in a minute. As reported in the beginning of the show, TNA wrestler Ric Flair had rotator cuff surgery on his shoulder this week after being written out of storylines at the Lockdown pay-per-view. On Impact Thursday night, TNA used Robert Roode's armbar on Flair during the Lethal Lockdown match to write off Flair. Ric Flair, who is 62 years old, already delayed the surgery in February, wanting to make it to the end of the Fortune vs. Immortal feud, but only wrestled one match on TV after the original injury in January. Since the injury is considered significant, Flair's progress in physical therapy following the surgery will likely determine when he's able to return to action. Flair injured his shoulder 3 months ago on TNA's UK tour in a match against Doug Williams. Flair came off the top rope for his trademark bump when he landed awkwardly on his shoulder. Not much you can say about the surgery. I mean, surgery is surgery. Everybody has it. But 62 years old. Still think you belong in the wrestling ring. I don't know. Doesn't make sense. Why not go out? Like I've ranted before. I mean, I know I should be commenting on the surgery itself. And I think it just should. Well, actually, I can now because a couple different things just came to mind. You basically have forgive the cliche already or the stereotype, whatever adjective you want to use, because I think for the next couple of years, until somebody bigger retires like Edge will be what we compare everything to. And Edge had fusion issues and neck and spinal problems, whereas Flair, it was only a rotator cuff, but the point could still be argued. This guy put off this injury. And is that necessarily the message you want to send right after somebody leaves the business because he's more or less told, wrestle one more match and it could be your last? I think it's irresponsible. I think, especially with the money Flair's making and how we've ridiculed Fortune and Immortal anyway, and how he's been ridiculed in with his part in it, I don't think anyone would have minded if he had this rotator cuff surgery right after the UK tour. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong, maybe it was the European tour, but wasn't the UK tour the tour where Flair was advertised to come back from TV after the rumors that there was an issue between him and TNA and the money he was making? Why not continue the hiatus, reach the new contract, if I'm right, but regardless, reach the new contract arrangement while you're going through physical therapy, get the surgery done sooner rather than later, and you wouldn't have, I mean, I'm not a doctor, and again, like we said with the depression thing and anything we mentioned on here, it's not a medical opinion of any kind. I'd like to think of it more as common sense, but why would you want to put it off increasing scar tissue that later builds up and causes more problems and leads to your one of the makings of your rundown, beat up wrestlers that we all criticize now, that Flair's actually a part of? You're 62 years old. You're trying to keep up with guys you should be putting over and passing the torch to, but instead you thought your fortune and a mere feud took precedence over physical well-being. And that was the point in yesterday's video, if it wasn't emphasized enough. The entertainment means nothing if the wrestlers entertaining us aren't at 100%. WWE, TNA alike should be up the asses, so to speak, not literally, but almost to a literal point, medically, when it comes to their performers. If they have a cold, these companies should know about it because it affects the well-being and performance, and overall, the performance of the wrestlers determines the outcome of the promotion's product. What I say is not new. It's all been there. It irritates me to think that there are people, especially in TNA, that walk around acting like everything we're talking about is a new concept. Why does a guy have to put off any kind of surgery, take a power bomb, take near-death spots, be asked to? Now, don't get me wrong. The lockdown botch on Angles, and Angle did that. But there were plenty of times where Russo writes in something that gets a pop, no matter what the risk is to the wrestler, and it needs to stop. Because, and I know I'll probably get this argument, so let me address it. Yeah, the wrestler can always say no. But the wrestler that says no usually doesn't, you say no one too many times, you find yourself mid-card or below. And the top 1% that we refer to, the superstars of any promotion, you know, regardless, do you call them the top one, the 1% tier, the top tier, whatever, they're not going to do that. I mean, you have your smart ones that take an injury as soon as they see it, like Triple H lately with his injuries. He finds out about them, and literally the next show, he finds a way to write himself off and addresses the issue. Medical attention should not come second to performing. I will stand behind that as a promoter, as a fan, sacrificing your own business, even if it's a headliner. Using the Scott Hall situation. You should have, A, given that man his money back, or, you know, told him you weren't going to use him, paid him for his travel, like I suggested before. Pay him for his travel if you have to, and he's belligerent about it because it's rumored that he was real mean about it, mean to the staff and whatnot. You pay him, and then you just take him to court, because the likelihood is the money's going to be gone anyway. You're not going to see it. So when a wrestler can't perform, and I'm not coming out on that independent promoter, because I did say, and I'm not trying to contradict myself, because I argued that if it was the only material, if Hall was part of the internet pay-per-view, which it sounds like he was, and that was the only material the promoter had to use, and Scott Hall agreed to work the match, then in my opinion, you shouldn't be too mad at the promoter because it's all he had to work with. Scott Hall was one of his headliners that he paid for. He had to use the material he had left because the next week was the pay-per-view. I mean, he's already paid these people, and what the media and what it sounds like the internet is more or less saying is that this promoter should be burned at the stake because these wrestlers want to keep going even after their time is done or when they have medical conditions. I mean, we commented yesterday on what Scott Hall said. I mean, we're getting reports that Scott Hall does not have a drug problem from friends, and then there's friends that confirm it. And from what we already know about Scott Hall, why wouldn't we jump on this Nash angle? I myself, that wasn't a TMZ story, that was a direct source and a very creditable source that broke that Kevin Nash Twitter stuff. But I believe it because of how we've seen how Scott Hall has behaved in the past. Is it wrong? Maybe. But he's built himself what they call a reputation. And my only argument is, kind of like the Jeff Hardy Victory Road thing, though, is it couldn't have happened all of a sudden. Why do you put any wrestler, regardless if it's independent or the two big names, any wrestler that can't do it, the moral of the story, medical attention should not outweigh whether or not he can perform. If they're not capable, just because it could be your biggest, it could be your main eventer. And if he's not ready, he shouldn't be asked to force it or work a quickie that protects him. He should just get it checked out. Medical attention should not come second because you want that wrestler for the long term. You've contracted that wrestler for the long term. So why not invest in their health? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, TNA. And moving on, as we reported yesterday, former X Division champion Jay Lethal has been released. There has been no formal announcement yet, but Lethal has been removed, as we reported yesterday, from TNA's roster page. This upcoming information is for the June 20th court date that TNA wrestler Jeff Hardy had. The Fayetteville Observer is reporting that Jeff Hardy did make an appearance in court today, referring to April 20th. His local attorney, James Van Camp, officially asked the court to consider Hardy for a sentencing services program, which works to create alternatives to serving prison time. In essence, Jeff would enter rehab as opposed to serving jail time if accepted under the program. Sentencing Service Administrator Becky Carlson said she had only conducted an initial review but felt that Hardy was, quote, borderline in need of entering a 28-day inpatient program. The case has been continued until June 1st. Here's the rant that I said you were going to get. So, I've been holding it in the last couple times because it gets to the point where this man gets continued so many times that when he goes back to court, we should just start placing bets on whether or not anything's going to actually happen. I mean, every court appearance I've had, and not to make myself sound like a hardened criminal or anything, because it's been trivial stuff, but every court appearance I have, by the time you leave court, you know whether or not you're good or not. This guy seems to make appearances and nothing seems to happen. Now, just taking this new information that we have, and let's dumb it down even though we don't have to. It more or less says that the lawyer got Hardy in front of some doctor, and to escape jail time, which he should really do, because in my opinion, it's one thing if you're trying not to get caught, and I hate to split hairs like this, but if you were trying, but blatantly what they found when they entered the home, he knew what he was doing. I've made this argument before, and I'm sorry if it sounds repetitive, but it is, because it's so freaking simple. I just don't understand how a promotion and a status and money sentence this guy already. And your new proposal basically says everything you did was cool, because in the end, all you're going to have to do is 28 days, pay your lawyer who already made the retainer, and everything else is gravy. 28 days, costs, and some fines. He was arrested in 2009. As I've emphasized in previous videos, if it were me or you, the day of our court date, the judge would have handed down our sentence. And I don't know about your state, depending on where you live, but in Pennsylvania, sometimes they give you till the end of the week, provided you have a job and affairs to get in order. But most people, as soon as the sentence is given, literally the minute it's given, the sheriff is behind you to take you into custody. Why should it be any different for a guy who, just because he has money and a wrestling status, to delay the justice system? The same justice system that you and I pay into, that is backlogged in this state, I don't know about yours, but is already so congested, to just have another situation where I call it going to court for appearance's sake. Nothing ever happens lately. He goes in and something else happens to where it gets continued. How hard is it to take what you have as a district attorney and just say, Your Honor, we feel the need that we feel that this case has been continued far enough. The original arrest was in 2009. The county would like to the district attorney's office would now like to would like to proceed with criminal prosecution and sentencing. Stop giving this man an out. And in regards to the rehab thing, as I said before, let's not throw stones if it really worked. If what Sting said a couple videos ago, like I reported, if Hardy's getting better, then congratulations to Hardy. The only unfair thing, that whether or not he's sober or he's still on the drug wagon, is how do you get caught blatantly like that, have it postponed for almost 2 years, and then in the end, you're not even going to see the inside of a jail cell, to what most people would label as a drug dealer and distribution practices. Essentially, if you read the charges, that's more or less what they got him on. Distribution, manufacturing, possession, paraphernalia, all the things of a drug dealer that a drug dealer anywhere else that I know of would go to jail for. Jeff Hardy will do 28 days, pay his lawyer off, pay court costs and a couple of fines, and hopefully before my life is over, he won't get any more continuances. That's part of the argument. Stop continuing it and either let him do his 28 days and we can complain, because we're already seeing that this is a biased situation, okay? Like I said, me or you would be gone. We would be serving our sentences the day after we got caught. But yet, TNA Wrestling made him the world champion, made him the face of the company while he was dealing with these problems, promoting to their demographic of kids and 18 to 24-year-olds. Well, congratulations, you've shown the 18 to 24-year-olds that drug drugs and drug users are okay, and you don't lose your job necessarily when you're on drugs. And giving him this rehab thing spits in the face of every other judicial system who wants to crack. I'm not saying I'm for the man, but for every other area where their judicial system wants to crack down and get rid of drugs and have zero tolerance policies, it spits in the faces of all those policies because it says the rules apply everywhere except here. And what else can you say on it? I mean, I personally, to conclude, think that it should not just be treatment and unprisoned treatment and his money that solves this. I think that for those crimes, like John Q. Public would, some kind of jail time. At this point, I'll take what I can get because he's manipulated, him and his lawyer have manipulated the system so bad that I think it's a little late to call for fair sentencing, especially when you're hearing that he's going to get the Sandra Bullock treatment, do 28 days, and that'll be that. But, come on, really? Essentially, he was caught drug dealing and manufacturing and in possession of drugs. And he's managed to stretch it out for 2 years while being employed for those 2 years, while being paid more for being the company's champion. And since TNA bases most of its contracts on per appearance, he got to make money while facing his legal problems. He wasn't advised to lay low, and if he was, he didn't. Most people, like I said in the very first video I did, when we posted that separate video on WrestleTalkShow.webs.com in our Out of the Ring video section, just click on videos and then Out of the Ring. That video is still up there. But that whole time, he should have been laying low. He should not have been the TNA World Champion. He should not have been allowed to make money. TNA should have said, you know what? We're going to give you your contract, but we need you to stay off. Because we're contractually binded to you, we're going to pay you every week. But we feel it's in your best interest, our best interest, and more importantly, the company's best interest, if you resolve this before we put you in a situation that's going to put you out there. Because all TNA did while he was still going through this is more or less make the name for themselves that we don't care if you're a drug user or what kind of criminal background you have. That's qualifications for world heavyweight material, in my opinion, is what they did. They didn't teach him any kind of lesson. WWE, you would have lost your job. Anywhere else, you would have lost your job or been suspended till it blew over. And if it didn't blow over in your favor, you would have lost your job. This is a man who's gotten every exception in the book, faced serious legal problems, but now, like I said before, has manipulated it to the point where it's kind of like when you take a big ball and over the years or a head of lettuce, so to speak, and every couple days peeling a piece back to where at the very end you're left with nothing. Well, that's what the punishment phase of this is essentially, because 28 days in a rehab, in court-ordered rehab, is nothing compared to the jail time that I think he should serve a little bit of, to make the message clear that we're not going to let you continue it. We're not going to convene court to think we're going to get somewhere just to have your lawyer continue it again. We're going to step up. Mr. Hardy, we're going to prosecute you. You're going to do an inpatient treatment facility. But before you do that, you're going to do 90 days or better. Give him something. Show that punishment exists for this. Because all it looks like now is, the longer you drag it out, the more they'll just want to get you out of the way, and it leads to a slap on the wrist, essentially. That's all I'm saying. Show him that he's not an exception to society. That's all. Moving on. And that was also our show segment. We went a little backwards, but there you go. You got my view on Jeff Hardy and all that. Moving on to the last bit of news we have for you, since we already did the segment. We did it kind of out of order. Wrestler Lance Storm introduces his new show, World of Hurt, which is defined as a wrestling finishing school. Quote, unlike Tough Enough, it's pretty much a finishing school. Pretty much everyone on the show has several years of experience. Everyone had at least a previous match. Everybody was previously trained, had some degree of experience, some of them with several years. It was like taking them to the next level, not just how to run ropes. And like we always say, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for your viewership. View this video and every other video at youtube.com/CWE Company. It's about 9:34 on this Friday night, April 22nd. So I'd like to say by midnight this video should be available to you. And again, visit WrestleTalkShow.webs.com. Visit the PayPal link, the forums, refer a friend, do whatever you can. Submit your logos and show comments, questions, concerns, anything and everything this shows. Submit to CWEcompany@gmail.com. We're looking for 2 or 3 more columnists to cover Raw, SmackDowns, and or pay-per-views. That way we can all do a little bit and collectively make 1 hour or better show every 2 days for you. I have several resumes and interests that I'm looking into. Visit our friends at pwtorch.com, Wade Keller and James Codwell, and their weekly live cast of Wrestling Review. Our friends Joe Negron and Dishfan at smartwrestlingfan.com and their 3-hour Wrestling Review podcast every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. ProWrestling.net for up-to-the-minute wrestling news and an audio show that kicks ass, so check Jason Powell out at ProWrestling.net. Friend us on Facebook and Twitter, both at CWE Company. And until next time, wrestling fans, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and we hope you enjoyed SmackDown. And our next video will probably be over the weekend for SmackDown and your wrestling news for the weekend leading into this week's Monday Night Raw. Have a great weekend, everybody. If we don't post before then, until next time.